In all the human societies we have ever reviewed, in every age and every state, there has seldom, if ever, been a shortage of eager young males prepared to kill and to die, to preserve the security, comfort, and prejudices of their elders. And what you call heroism is just an expression of this fact. There is never a scarcity of idiots. I'm John Dolan, aka the War Nerd, and that was from Use of Weapons by Iain M. Banks.
Beauty is something that disappears when you try to define it. State of the Art by Iain Banks. Maker van en Melon, I'm Mel from Enteresting Tales from Tolkien, a Podmoot, a weekly Lord of the Rings podcast in which I guide my friend Kristen through her first ever reading of The Hobbit, The Lord of the Rings, and other Tolkien-related works. Find us wherever you get your podcast.
If you have any helpful suggestions, I'd be pleased to hear them. If all you can do is make snide insinuations, then it would probably benefit all concerned if you bestowed the fruits of your prodigious wit on someone with the spare time to give them the consideration they doubtless deserve. Hi, I'm John from the Totally Tanked podcast, and that was from Accession by Iain M. Banks.
Empathise with stupidity and you're halfway to thinking like an idiot. That was a quote from Chapter 2 of Consider Phlebas. I'm Sheridan, the host of the Culture Books Club podcast.
Welcome to the Culture Books Club. My name is John.
And my name's Sheridan.
So this is intended to be a read-along podcast to Iain M. Banks' culture novels. These books are immensely fun to read, and we hope this podcast will capture some of that fun, as well as bring you a sense of companionship when we hit one of those what the hell was that twists for which Banks was famous. With one long-time Banks reader, myself, and one new to the books,
me.
This is intended to be an entertaining listen for both those tackling the series for the first time, as well as those just reliving the sense of wonder vicariously. You can choose to read a chapter with us each week, or if you've read them already, then by all means just have a listen and reminisce. The purpose of this podcast is firstly to have some fun, but secondly to encourage more readers to engage with his work. And it's not a substitute for buying the books. This is something to do to get you to buy the books. Too often science fiction represents an old iron dream with traditional hero narratives and highly fascist, although often unintentional subtexts. The culture offers an alternative way to look at the possibilities of the future. And in our own time, too many tech billionaires have expressed an admiration for these books without seeming to understand what they're trying to say. These books are always about making difficult choices, but they're also about the consequences and ramifications of those choices, even when made by the smartest minds with the best intentions. With that out of the way, get yourself a copy of Consider Phlebas, read the Prelude, subscribe to this podcast, the Culture Books Club, on wherever you get your pods, and get ready for what we have to offer. Now, Sheridan, the prelude to this book.
Well, first of all, that introduction is I'm really excited to be reading these books because I didn't realise they were so deep.
Oh, yeah? Are they ever deep? So just getting into the start of the book, because it's got a little bit going on. So Consider Phlebas is the title of this one, and we'll get to what that means in the dedications. So the first part is just the words, idolatry is worse than carnage, and then attributes that to the Quran, Surah 2, verse 190. What does that mean to you, Sheridan?
Not much.
Okay.
I don't really read the preludes, I have to say.
Okay, I think in this particular case there's a lot going, there's a huge amount going on here. So idolatry is worse than carnage is trying to give a sense of religious fundamentalism and saying that someone who has a different sort of religion to you is worse than murder.
Can I actually say something that we hadn't spoken about before this podcast, but I'm holding a printed copy of the book, and you read it on Kindle, and my prelude says persecution is worse than carnage.
Oh, because this is what I'm going to get to. Okay, and does it still call it 2:190, or does it have a different verse?
Now it has 2:190.
Okay.
Oh, 2:191, sorry.
Really interesting. Okay, so I'm on the Kindle version, you're on the printed one. And what I'm going to now talk about is the actual Quran 2:190 says, fight in the cause of Allah only against those who wage war against you, but do not exceed the limits Allah does not like transgressors. And that isn't the verse at all that we just had. And in fact, it's 2:217 that has the much better translation, persecution is far worse than killing.
Well, whoever printed this...
has revised it, yeah.
Yeah, they've got it more accurate.
Yeah. And I think, now there's a few things going on there. One is, does a Scotsman in 1986, when he was writing this, actually have that deep knowledge of the Quran, or was it just a little typo stuff up? I don't think it was, because he was a lifelong supporter of the Palestinian cause, to the point that he didn't allow translations into Hebrew or his books to be sold in Israel.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Now, that's not to say he was an anti-Semite at all. It was simply that the persecution of the people of Palestine was something that he took extremely seriously. And so I think he knew, and he putting it in there in that strange way was a bit of an Easter egg to show how people's views of other religions can be misperceived. Which is extremely meta. And then what's the next part of the dedication?
It's a T.S. Eliot quote from The Wasteland for Gentile or Jew, O you who turn the wheel and look to windward, consider Phlebas, who was once handsome and tall as you.
Now, there's a little bit more of The Wasteland that's you need to unpack to go with this. So his name is Phlebas the Phoenician, and there's an earlier mention in Book 1 of The Wasteland, which goes, with a wicked pack of cards, here, said she, is your card, the drowned Phoenician sailor. Those are pearls that were his eyes, look. Then later in that book, there I saw one I knew and stopped him crying, Stetson, you who were with me in the ships at Mylae, that corpse you planted last year in your garden, has it begun to sprout, will it bloom this year? And Mylae was the great battle between the Romans and the Carthaginians, who were also called Phoenicians. And then the full quote from Book 4 is, Phlebas the Phoenician, a fortnight dead, forgot the cry of gulls and the deep sea swell and the profit and loss. A current under sea picked his bones in whispers. As he rose and fell, he passed the stages of his age and youth, entering the whirlpool. Gentile or Jew, O you who turn the wheel and look to windward, consider Phlebas, who was once handsome and tall as you. And I think what all of that about in The Wasteland, and The Wasteland's, it's the Mount Everest of poetry, is it's meditating on the inability of the Phoenicians to adapt to the changing world around them and how that condemned them to eventual destruction. And I think that's extremely relevant to where the book's going.
Well, you know where they go. I don't.
Sure. Okay. Anyway, so that's 6 minutes discussing the very first page of the book, and then we get to there's dedication in the memory of Bill Hunt, which I don't know who Bill Hunt is. But
Me neither. I didn't Google it.
And then Sheridan, tell me what happens in the prologue.
Well, the prologue is about machines. There's no humans in it. It's a machine that is just trying to save itself, really.
Itself, you think?
Or maybe its mind. Its mind seems to be not entirely solely machine. It seems it has some sort of ability of self-determination. But yeah, this is where, I'm not a sci-fi person, so I was like, ooh, this Prelude is hard going. But when we get into chapter 1, there's humans there, so I was more okay. Yeah,
I think that there's actually a problem here for this book in that the prologue could put off a lot of people who might otherwise like the book because it's so cold, sterile.
It's very cold.
Yeah. Having said that, it's some astonishing action writing.
It is, yeah. I did feel I wanted the machine to survive.
Yep.
I wanted to know where it was going. I'm a little unsure whether it did actually escape its own destruction. Because it seems to destroy itself but somehow also survive, which is really like a complete mind meld for me.
Okay, so I think I can safely say the factory craft is one artificial intelligence. and it's got a newborn artificial intelligence, which is the mind. And it's desperately tried to pack the mind, because it's on the losing side of a war and they're being overrun by the enemy, into the bits and pieces it can cobble together of some sort of spaceship and fire that out in the hope that it can escape the onrushing enemy.
What about the poor little drones, though, that are all putting it
The
together
servitors,
and
yeah.
they don't survive? The poor little things.
Yeah, but they succeeded possibly in their mission. And so you've got it's a great description of what it feels like to lose a war. Now, admittedly, I haven't personally experienced that, but I've read lots of books about it. And in particular, the way the mind in its ship what's the name of the ship?
Oh, what is the name of the ship?
It doesn't have a name.
Yeah.
It doesn't have a name.
Oh, that's right, because the factory mother didn't give it one. Because it had no hope.
That's right.
It's cold, cold mother.
I'll read the line here. Nevertheless, there was another reason, the real reason, the dockyard mother didn't give its warship child a name. It thought there was something else it lacked. Hope. Which was really...
It's a little cold, though. I think all mothers... Well, maybe it's... I think all mothers would hope that their children have hope.
It's a little Superman, this scene, though. You know at the start of Superman when the parents pack the little baby into the spaceship and shoot it out into the stars as their world explodes around them?
True. I felt like maybe the whole point of the prologue was just to introduce you to the worlds where the mind seems to go to, which is Shah's world.
Yeah, but it does that right at the very end, like literally in the last paragraph. And
It's only a 2.5-page prologue.
Yeah, but there's a lot of action happens. True. I mean, if this was a movie, this would be a solid 10-minute open.
I wrote no notes in the prologue margins.
Really? There's one paragraph I'd like to read, just to relive the kinetic nature of the writing. The ship did all it could to avoid combat. It kept well away from the routes enemy craft would probably use. It treated every hint of any craft as a confirmed hostile sighting. At the same time, as it zigzagged and ducked and weaved and rose and fell, it was corkscrewing as fast as it could, as directly as it dared, down and across the strand of the galactic arm in which it had been born, heading for the edge of that great isthmus and the comparatively empty space beyond. On the far side, on the edge of the next limb, it might find safety. So there's a lot of rhyming in there. There's a lot of alliteration. It's basically a quite complex piece of poetry.
True.
But you don't need to read it like that. You just soak up the action and you get enough of a sense of what's happening. And it's very hard to write tight action that doesn't just confuse the reader.
Yes. I did feel as though, too, I wanted to know a little bit more about the enemy because they're so astounded the mind was able to escape. Because there's a section in there that says that that it wouldn't have been able to escape. It runs all these algorithms and can't figure out how it could escape, but it finds one way to get out of the situation of its own self-destruction.
Yeah, I mean, that's, again, it's very tautly written, but what it's describing is, the initial reaction of, oh, hey, it's blown up. Like, oh, maybe there was a path it could have escaped out of, but it can't have done it. Oh, hang on, we've got traces that it did. And if it was, you could imagine a scene where scientists are discussing the things they've seen, but then it's just like, these are just battle computers talking amongst themselves.
And I guess it's quite heroic, because it does seem to manage some sort of, impossible escape from its own.
Well, the mind has escaped the destruction of its ship. Yeah. And then, and it's also signalled, and this is, again, really important for the future story, in the explosion that it's created, where it is and what's happened to it, so that other observers in the galaxy can know that there's a mind that needs rescuing.
Yes.
And then this very cryptic sentence that the planet the mind had made for through its shield of explosions was not one they could simply attack, destroy, or even land on. It was Shah's world, near the barren space between two galactic strands called the Sullen Gulf, and it was one of the forbidden planets of the dead.
I mean, I feel like these planets of the dead are going to feature. They sound exciting.
Well, probably this one. Shah's world seems like it's got something going on. So, I mean, what do you as a new reader know about this universe at this point?
Well, it seems as though machines play a very significant role.
Mm-hmm.
And they seem to be fighting a lot of wars on their own, absent biological entities.
Right.
I'm not going to assume there's humans at this point.
Mm.
And they seem... Well, I mean, they're definitely anthropomorphized. Is that the right word?
As in that they have emotions like hope and... Yeah.
Well, except the mother. She sounds horrible.
Well, she's done everything she can.
She says her children have no hope. She sounds evil. She's like every mother that ever existed.
Sorry, we've got a small cat trying to invade the podcast. Hooray. Okay. You didn't think the mother had hope? Well, okay.
Well, she says the children don't have hope, so...
She doesn't have hope for her child, but she still did everything she could. She just didn't give it a name, which in the culture, this isn't a huge spoiler, the names of the ships are a big deal.
Oh, okay, well, that sort of does sound a bit significant.
Elon Musk names his recovery barges after culture ships.
Oh, God. What have you got me into?
But like I said, Elon doesn't understand it.
Right. I'm worried now.
And the billionaire who sent a submarine to the bottom of the Mariana Trench a couple of years ago also named his ships after Iain M. ships. We are going to have a regular segment when ships have names as to what our favourite name of each chapter is.
Okay.
But, okay, we're at 15 minutes, and I think for a prelude, that's quite a lot.
2.5 pages, I think we did well.
Yeah. There's a lot to talk about. And so, on that note, we're going to close out this episode. So, now's a good time to read Chapter 1 and come back and see where we've got up to.